All right, folks, here we are, back to record another podcast of On This Hill.
Yeah, I've been gone a few weeks. It's good to be here.
Yeah, we had two missionary couples come in
Yeah.
and share with us. They were at both of our campuses and then came into the podcast, and so you had to share your chair. Yeah, I don't know if you got a chance to watch one of those, but the one with Chris and Mandy is fun because they're holding their baby the whole time.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got 3 kids under 4 years old. That's a busy life.
Yeah, and raising them in Uganda.
Uganda, yeah.
That's a very different life than most of our kids are getting as an upbringing. So moms everywhere. Yeah, our other missionary couple also. Sorry, I should stop calling them a missionary couple. They prefer not to have that name. But they also are raising...
3 kids.
Yep, they're in a different phase of life, though. Their kids are older than Chris and Mandy's, but also doing that. You did parenting on the mission field as well.
We did, yeah. And I don't think there was anything that I would regret in a major way. I think, there's certain things you don't grow up with when you live in another country, but there's other things that you do grow up with that are super valuable later in your life.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't live overseas with our kids. We did that before we had kids. I guess barely. We came home right after adoption, so we had Grace a couple months in China. But that was not a foreign context for her. It was a foreign context for us.
Yeah. And
then we came home pregnant with Faith, and then raised them here, still doing missions, but raised them here.
I think that'd be transformational in American life if you could just spend 1 or maybe a year just overseas in another culture with your kids. They see something else, especially if they're old enough to kind of understand and absorb what they're living in, and exposure to another language, another way of thinking. Americans are notoriously, known for monoculture. Our culture, we're the center of the universe. Doesn't everybody think like us? Doesn't everybody eat like us, drive like us? And then you get to another country and you're like, whoa, the world's a big place. Yeah,
so are your kids, do they think of themselves as, now I think they call it third culture kids?
I think so.
So they're not super comfortable. They're not really of the U.S. They're not really of Mexico. They're this third thing. They're a little bit of both.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's an identity thing as much as it's an appreciation thing. I think they have a deep appreciation for the fact that there's beauty in every culture. Of course, my younger son, David, he's a medical translator. So he's in the hospitals working with Hispanics and translating from Spanish to English. So that's your, that's your missionary kid job.
Yeah, 100%.
For sure, 100%. But he loves it, and he loves what he does, and he's super aware and sensitive of what it feels like to be a foreigner in another country, because that's how he grew up as an outsider who became an insider. I mean, some of his deepest relationships were in that culture, and so it's weird. Like, you have your heart and your feet in both worlds. It's not it's never, you stop saying, is it better or worse? It's just different, and I can appreciate both.
We're recording this just before Mother's Day, but it'll come out after Mother's Day. So we had when this comes out, when people are watching it, we will have had our Mother's Day service and talking about talking about the complications of what that looks like, and it's. I think there's always these ideas, like we're describing raising kids in another place. I think every parent has this feeling like, I want to do well for my kids, but sometimes that comes off like I want them to have more than I had.
Yeah.
And that's not always that's not always a success, or that's not always the best thing you could do for your kid.
Yeah. Because it's usually tied to the some version of the American dream. But the American dream is isn't always a good dream. I think. I mean, there's parts of it that are great, but I think sometimes there's just a narrow perspective on what success is and what joy looks like and appreciation.
Yeah, I think my hope, my goal, is stated to my kids, as we would describe to them, because from the time they're little, they start thinking about, what do I want to be when I grow up, or what do I want to have, and they go through phases. At least my girls did, of liking really nice things, especially you get to middle school or so, and suddenly brand names become really important, and what they're part of because they're trying to figure out their identity, so they want to borrow an identity from Nike or from whoever. I remember kind of trying to walk through that and battle that with them. Like every kid, wants to move towards materialism. I think most kids do it.
It's attractive, and it's definitely, you're inundated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And wanting more than anything for my kids, for them to obviously have a healthy relationship with God, to hear from God, and to obey God. Like that's what I wanted more than anything else. Is like, hey, like because when you think about career, they're kind of thinking about, well, what kind of life do I want to have? When you think about a career, do I want to have a nurse's life? Do I want to have a doctor's life? Do I want to have a lawyer's life?
Yeah.
And
then what will that look like?
Yeah.
In the trappings of that particular job. It's interesting you say that, because I was thinking that both our boys were middle school. They were out of this country for all their middle school years.
Yeah.
And our older son Jacob, his high school years. So I'm thinking back in that season where we worked in Mexico was still an economically closed country. The free trade agreement was just coming on. And so there wasn't there was actually very little American product. And believe it or not, in the first 5 or 6 years that we were there, the internet really hadn't even arrived. And so you lived in this isolated sort of environment, if you looked at it through today's glasses.
Sure.
But there was no marketing that was aimed at branding your children. And so what they did was they just grew up hanging out, playing soccer, eating good food, listening to music, and doing things that look like now. But there was no brand attached to it. They weren't wearing Nike shoes or I mean, there was a little bit of the professional sports in the soccer line of things. But it was kind of a funny but beautiful, isolated environment.
That sounds nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, getting to spend some of those years with my girls on a Youth with a Mission base here in Salem, they look back on that time very fondly.
Yeah.
Because that was 30-some acres, of creek and hill and community.
Life was just
they could go from house to house and find friends and, run and catch crawdads in the creek. And things were just turned off a little bit more. There wasn't so many things turned on, screens to look at or anything else.
And it's something vying for your attention, competing for your attention, your loyalty.
Yeah, and their friends and their heroes were people that were around them, not through a screen, not through a social media, but it was the people like, oh, I really look up to this person or this mom or this, missionary.
Yeah. Yeah, and there wasn't as much a hierarchy either of value depending on what you were wearing or what side of town you lived on. Because, I mean, it was an interesting season.
Yeah,
but
I don't know. I think just thinking about looking at Mother's Day, and we're two fathers talking about it. But I kind of see the pressure that like my wife went through, especially with daughters, a mom of daughters, and what that looked like to raise from that perspective. Where the dad definitely has a role, an important role. We'll talk about that more and more when we get to Father's Day or in men's ministry. But trying to wrap my head around the societal ideas that were put on her is just so different. Yeah.
It's interesting. I was reflecting on this very thing a couple of days ago. Just if I could just pick, if someone was to say, well, pick 3 things that you want to or tried to instill, 3 things of value in your kids, what would they be? And I think it's an actually interesting exercise because we think of today of Today, the big discussion is, well, who am I going to leave my assets to? We're talking about trusts and lawyers and wills and all kinds of things like that. But what's the spiritual heritage, that our children are going to receive from us?
Yeah. Did you come up with an answer? Did you think of 3 that were?
It's still in process, but I do. I have 3 things that I would list. One again is that, hey, I want you to honor God because that's the most. He who honors me, I will honor, God said, in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
And I want him to live a life that honors God because in that sense, you can't lose. You can never lose. And I also want him to appreciate deep relationships. I want him to live and say, hey, relationships are important.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, that's all we're going to have left is the quality of relationships that we cultivated and cared about, people we cared about.
I was listening to a as you say that, like the relationships, the depth of them, and that's what we have left. I was listening to a little clip. It was John Mark Comer, used to pastor up in Portland. Now he does I think it's a mentoring, spiritual leadership guiding thing. I'm not sure. I just don't know exactly what he's doing now.
Yeah.
But anyways, when he was pastoring, I was listening to a little clip of his, and he was talking about what we call life groups, just small group ministries, and how hard it is, the cost, that there's this high cost. You know, you have to give up some of your time every week. You have to reorder, you know, your priorities. It's going to cost you a little bit even financially as people come to your house, or you feed them, or you share with one another, or, oh, now there's 10 more birthdays I've got to think about every year because I'm friends with these people, or it's going to cost you something like emotionally. It's going to drain you a little bit.
Yeah.
But, you know, as he was describing the cost, he said, I don't want to downplay the cost. The costs, you know, are real. But he said, as a pastor, he said, we actually checked to see if this was true. And he said, it's true that I think it was like 90%, he was saying, 90% of the people that come needing a pastor are outside of the life groups. If they're in the life groups, they rarely are coming saying, I have to have time with you. I have to have counseling. I have to have, you know, attention, or they don't find themselves in crisis. And he said, it's not that they didn't have those same things, but they were being taken care of within this group of 10 or 12 people. They were loving one another, meeting one another's needs. And he said it blew his mind that he knew that was true, but when he actually looked at it and realized, man, if I could help these people get into this, and they're not doing it because of the cost. They're choosing not to be in this group because of the cost of giving up a night, or giving up some of their emotional energy, or giving up some of their money, or whatever. They think the cost is too high, but they're actually, the cost of not doing it is way higher. Way higher.
Yeah.
You know, they'd save themselves in the long run.
And I think even the supposed experts in our culture, psychiatrists and guys who study sociology, will tell you that isolation is killing people. And so the idea of having quality relationships, now you can't be best friends with 100 people, but you can certainly have a community that you call your own, be it a church community or something like that, a small group that you depend on. I mean, as pastors, you and I see this all the time. There's nothing more heartbreaking than seeing people come to the end of their lives, or come to a situation that's crisis, and they've got no one to lean on. They've got no close family members. And so,
and you can see that even with people that they've got family, they've got siblings or kids out there, but
it's broken.
They're broken.
Yeah. And then the third thing for me was that you would love the people you marry to the best of your ability, and the people that God gives you in family. So, you know, love God, love people, and then live in your marriage from a place of honor and perseverance and commitment. And man, if you, all the rest is incidental. All the rest is incidental. Whether you make a lot of money or a little money, own a lot of stuff, or no, you're not going to own anything. Whether people know your name or they don't know your name, you can lose all that. And just, if you have those three things, I think you have a life worth living.
Yeah, it's so true. My kids are at that age now where one is married, one is of a marriable age, and you know, like, okay, this is going to happen probably within the next few years, 10 years at least, you're going to get married. And seeing, like, more than any other decision that they make outside of their deciding to serve the Lord, this is going to determine your life. Because you could work at a great or a miserable job, but if your marriage is, you know, that changes everything.
As any occupation, you can be set up financially and all kinds of things, but man, if the person closest to you, if you're not in uni, if you're miserable.
One of the things from this Sunday's message that really struck me, it's just, and I've read it, I don't know how many times, but this moment when Abraham is having this interaction with God, and I mean, I don't know exactly what that looked like, but Abraham was hearing from God in some way. And God pulls him outside, like purposefully.
Points him upward.
Points him up and gives him a different perspective, because I'm sure there had to be some anxiety, he's getting to what he thinks is the end of his life, probably. Like, wow, I'm this old. How many people live past this? And you're still talking about me having a kid. And God pulls him outside and has him look up at the stars. And number them if you can kind of moment. And I think even that question sort of makes you change your perspective. Like, well, I can't even count. I can't even do the job of counting. Like, yeah, that's right. You can't. I can. Yeah. I made that. Can you think of there might be something more than your circumstances. There might be something more than
bigger
than your pain even. And that I'm at work doing that thing. Will you cooperate with me? Will you just believe? All you have to do is just believe that I'm going to do it. And maybe stop trying to do it another way.
Yeah.
But would you just believe that I'm going to do it, and then the work will be done?
That's just so much the story of our lives, isn't it? Yeah. Just last night in our life group, we've been walking through different passages and meditating and kind of doing the observing and application. And we did Psalm 73, where it's a very similar deal, where the worship leader Asaph has found himself in a pit of despair because he envies the wicked. He envies the people who don't serve God, don't care about God, and they seem to be prospering.
Yeah.
They're rich, they're fat, they're sassy, and so forth. And he said, this is oppressive. I don't understand it. And then there's this middle of the passage line where he says, until I went into the sanctuary of God. And of course, what happened there was just what happened to Abraham, was perspective.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, he saw a bigger picture.
Yeah.
And he had a truer picture of what was real, what was true, and what was eternal. And so I think that was God's purpose in taking Abraham outside. Abraham, I want to give you a bigger picture of what's real.
There's probably two things that's worth. There's a lot of things that are worth, but one thing that strikes me is listen to God, trust and believe God. The other thing is God used his nature, his creation, to prove a point. Like, it's worth going outside.
Yeah.
Honestly, it is. It's worth going outside. Yeah. It's worth touching creation. I feel like it does connect you in ways to deeper truths that you won't, like, unless you look at the Grand Canyon, unless you look up at the stars, unless you see, Mount Hood or something. Sometimes we just get stuck. It happens to me all the time. I'll look up during the day and see the moon. When I don't know, something about the moon at daytime feels like I'll remember, like, oh yeah, I'm on a planet. I know that sounds funny, but you can forget you're on a planet. You can just think, I'm in a town, I'm in a car, or I'm in a city, I'm driving to here. And then I look up and I see them and I'm like, oh, I'm on a planet that's hanging in space.
Spinning. 60,000 miles an hour.
And there's another mini planet circling us, and we're circling the sun. It just always...
And we don't fly off.
Yeah, it never ceases to amaze me. I'll say it to my wife sometimes. She's like, yeah, I know. We're on a planet.
Yeah. Yesterday, I was in a downtown building that was windowless, and it was a big building. It was a hospital, and just being in there for about an hour. And I remember walking out yesterday, and the sun is shining, and the trees are green, and it smells like spring, and just feeling like just that little thing in that moment, like, oh my gosh, there's a whole world out here that's fresh and beautiful and encouraging. Everything inside that building I just left was people are in there because they're in trouble, or there's some kind of crisis going on. And I mean, God bless the people that have chosen to work there. But point is that sometimes I think that's like our lives. We are living this windowless life, and we feel like it's crushing us, it's oppressing us. That's what the writer there of Psalm 73 said. He said, I'm oppressed. I'm being crushed by and then boom, you walk outside and you're like, oh, okay, it's going to be all right. Life's bigger than my circumstance.
Talking about that, I think we'll keep going around this kind of same idea of parenting and circumstances, what we want for our kids and the change. One of the perspectives that I came away with from fostering is that nothing has the impact on a society like a healthy marriage. Like, nothing can heal a society like a healthy marriage.
Yeah.
That so much time and energy and finances and laws and red tape is just around what happens when a couple blows up, when a couple disintegrates,
the fallout, the collateral damage,
or choose to never become a family,
Yeah.
and only have kids. That God's way of marriage and sexuality isn't strict, it's loving. It's the most loving thing in the world to do.
It's productive,
It's so productive. It's so healthy. And that we throw it off as strict or oppressive,
antiquated.
It is so much more oppressive to break those rules and laws. It is so much more oppressive. You will end up with a destroyed life if you break those.
Yeah, not
those
to mention
simple
the people around you.
Yeah. The commands of God are so incredibly loving, and just watching it, like watching families, break up and disintegrate over lots of reasons. Sometimes, ones that were maybe easier to sympathize with, like poverty has got you in this place, but rarely was it poverty alone. It was usually other circumstances as well. Often drugs or just immorality, just immoral choices.
Yeah.
And then kids suffer. And when kids suffer and someone else has to care for them, someone else has to raise them.
Yeah.
Like the state it's almost impossible for the state to do that well. Yeah. It takes they realized a long time ago, not that no orphanage could ever work or that orphanages can't be great places, but it really is going to take a mom and a dad to raise a kid. They realize, like, well, I can't just stick them in an institution. I can't, like, what it'll take to break this cycle is a mom and a dad.
Yeah.
And so they try to institute this, foster relationship. So momming is one of the most powerful things that you could possibly do. It's one of the most
the power of imprint
productive.
and nurturing. That the role of a mother has. It's funny how the role of a mother has been so kind of I don't know, not discouraged, but looked down upon as demeaning for some reason. But man, the role of a mother in the life of a son or a daughter, and then the greater role of the shaping of that child in a culture, in a society, it's just beyond. It's irreplaceable.
I think I understand in a lot of ways why it's considered demeaning. I mean, it's the lowest service you can give. You're changing someone's dirty diaper. You're pulling boogers out of their nose. You're picking up after them. You're doing jobs that are relatively thankless because little kids don't know right away to thank a person for doing. They have to be trained for that. So I get why it is kind of considered that, but that's just because we live in a crazy backwards economy of what is worthy and what is not worthy. In God's economy, it's the service for another and laying down your life is the highest calling that you could have. I remember someone years ago telling me in training, if God calls you to be a servant, don't stoop to being a king. And it took me a while to wrap my head around that. I'm like, oh, you're saying that it'd be a lower calling to try to serve myself or have others serve me than to serve others.
Yeah. And it's the upside down kingdom. It's in the natural that will never really make sense. There's got to be some kind of kingdom understanding to really to make that resonate in your heart and see that. But man, I'm so grateful for the people that did see that. Growing up, my mom was a healthcare professional. She worked full time the entire time we were growing up. But I never felt like her job was more important than us. I felt like she was doing her job so she could be important to us. And there's a big difference in those two things.
Totally,
So, she never gave up time with us to do something, but she worked hard. She worked full time. She raised 4 kids. But we always felt like we were the most important thing. We were the number one priority.
Yeah.
And she was able to juggle both of those things, which looking back at the time, I didn't totally appreciate it. But now, as an adult, I'm like, how did you do that? It was just amazing. Full-time job, raising 4 kids, and she worked nights. It was mind-blowing.
That really is amazing. She was a strong woman.
Yeah. At the time, again, I couldn't wrap my head around it. I was too young to understand what that costs.
One thing I love about my mom, but appreciated even when I was a kid, so I'd say in the past tense I loved about her, is that she liked to be around us. Because I'd hear other moms or kind of joke about, I can't wait till summer vacation is over and they go back to school, or ship them off to camp or stuff like that. And my mom was always like really clear, like, I love it when you guys are home. I miss you when you're at school. Like, and I'm sure we'd drive her crazy at times too. But she was always clear that it wasn't just a job to her. Like she loved being around us.
Yeah.
That just made me feel good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and that's something, like you said earlier, that's irreplaceable. It can't be, there can be substitute maybe and surrogate type of things, but man, the love of a parent and the imprint that puts on you in the form of security and confidence and just the sense of well-being is beyond compare.
There's a book called Every Moment Holy. It's a book of modern liturgy. Someone has written prayers for all of these different moments.
Yeah.
And one of them is for changing diapers. Actually, he's written two of them now. I'm going to read just a piece of it if that's okay. But this is a liturgy for changing diapers. So if you don't know what a liturgy is a prayer that you would just repeat.
You pause and pray.
Yeah, you pause and pray, and it's a prayer you could pray every single time. So it's not necessarily spontaneous, but it's thought through. And this is part of what it says. This little act of diapering, though in form sometimes felt like base drudgery, might be better described as one of 10,000 acts by which I am actively creating a culture of compassionate service and selfless love to shape the life of this family and this beloved child. So take this unremarkable act of necessary service, O Christ, and in your economy let it be multiplied into the greater outworking of worship and of faith, a true investment in the incremental advance of your kingdom across generations. Open my eyes that I might see this act of diapering for what it is from the fixed vantage of eternity, O Lord, how the changing of a diaper might sit upstream of the changing of a heart, how the changing of a heart might sit upstream from the changing of the world.
Yeah.
Amen.
Amen.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love
And,
that.
it's interesting that a culture is going to be shaped and marked by how they treat the most vulnerable and the neediest, whether that's a helpless baby or a helpless aged parent, that we see value in serving them. And it builds something into the fabric of a culture that goes far beyond anything else, that, hey, we value human life.
Yeah, and I think connecting our work, whether you're a mom or you're a dad or you're a mechanic or you're a whatever, like the idea of connecting my work, like this is upstream from something else. I'm not just mowing the lawn. I'm bettering my house for my family. I'm making a fun, safe backyard for my kids to play in. I'm not just changing the oil. I'm making sure my wife gets safely to work and back. I'm protecting something. I'm guarding something. I think if we could do what this prayer is trying to do and realize, it's not just the changing of a diaper, it's the changing of a heart. And what's amazing about, to me, parenting, especially at the baby age, is that babies don't remember it. All of those acts that you will do will go unremembered by them, but it will go into their soul.
Yeah.
Like it becomes a part of who they are. Because one of the things they teach us in caring for kids who have been through trauma is that the deepest and worst traumas actually happen in the times that they can't remember it because they can't grow up and process it.
Right.
If an 8-year-old gets abused or hit, they can eventually start to process what happened. But if a 8-month-old is abused and hit, it'll just show up in their life, and they don't know where it comes from. They don't know why it's happening, and they don't know what to do with it. But that same thing happens, I think, with love. When you love those kids, like it shows up in their life. It comes, and they don't necessarily know why. But it's transformative. It's amazing.
Yeah. When our kids were still in the womb, we would talk to the babies in the womb or sing or play music,
Yeah.
And I think it was more than just our imaginations. I really think that there's a power there. There's an active brain and a soul at work, regardless of how old they are chronologically.
Yeah. Yeah. So moms, good job.
Yeah.
Good
we
job,
couldn't have done it
moms.
without you.
No, we couldn't.
Not only would we not be here,
but
we would be very different without an active mom in our lives.
I tried a couple times to call my mom last night, just try to catch up. But then I realized, it's Wednesday night. She's in church. Still faithfully. If the church doors are open, my mom is there, whether it's Wednesday or Sunday night, or they're doing a potluck, or she mows the church lawn. She is a huge influence on me and church work, even though she was never a minister, never held a license or maybe even a position in the church. But she definitely had a huge influence on me in the area of ministry. So.
Yeah, we're grateful for moms of all kinds. I mean, there's moms that are just your typical maybe patterns, and then there's moms that have mothered through adverse circumstances of some kind of pain or tragedy or loss. And then there's moms that are, they weren't necessarily birth moms, but they were volunteer moms that stepped in and loved other people's kids. They adopted, they loved, they cared. But man,
Yeah.
regardless of what the status was, they made an impact, and they make an impact on our world.
Well, all right. We probably can get out here, but we do have a lot of stuff coming up. Maybe just let people know if you want to be a part of stuff that's happening in Church in the Hill. Go to the website and check that out.
Us out.
There's a lot of things happening. We will have, when this comes out, we'll have just had another men's breakfast. So we do that every month. I encourage people to come do that with us. We've got some missions trips, service trips on the calendar. If you'd like to join, it's not too late. You can still be a part of the Mexico trip. If you'd like to go to Eurasia, it's a good chance maybe both of us are going on that trip.
Yeah.
I could say Turkey, I guess. We're going to Turkey, so if you'd like to go on that.
Yeah. So, and speaking of kids, there's all kinds of kids stuff that happens around here in the summer. We have a Day of the Child. I think that's what they call it, Kids Day.
I think that's what they say in Mexico, Day of the Child. I think they just call it Children's Day here.
Children's Day, and that's coming up in June. And yeah, we do some neighborhood stuff here in the VBS. So if you want to work with kids, give us a call or check out our website. Watch what's coming.
Just before we pushed record on this, we were seeing there's a new pope elected, and that he is from Chicago.
So yeah,
and he's your age.
That's amazing. I missed
same
it.
Age.
I can't believe I wasn't on the ballot.
You were this close. You were raised
same age,
Catholic. You're the
not
same
sure
age.
where.
Chicagoan.
Maybe we would have known each other.
Do you have any advice? I'm not being disrespectful. Do you have any advice for the new
pope?
New pope.
Listen carefully and probably talk less, but that's typical of a pope. They're pretty good about listening. So
that's good.
But care for the poor, man.
Yep. All right, folks. Hope to see you on Sunday. Bye.
Yeah. Take care.
Bruce, congratulations.
I'm sorry?
Congratulations.
Mm-hmm.
You have a new pope.
Oh, wow.
Chicago. Cardinal Robert Prevost, Villanova graduate.
An American-born pope. Wow.
Vernon Shetler just texted me and said it's a disappointingly short conclave.
Yeah. Sorry, Brandon.
We have a pope. Isn't it funny how like one segment of a population is glued to that, and there's a whole bunch of other people that could care less.
Yeah.
Like beyond. Yeah, because it's been a while. You had Argentine, you had German, you had Polish.
They'll call him Leo the 14th.
Robert Prevost, cardinal originally from Chicago, is now the Holy Father. The last thing we were expecting. United States, really? And it's actually happened. So
That is pretty shocking.
It is in a way, in light of the current politics.
Yeah, I just looked up, is he liberal or conservative? Just curious what decision they made.
Mm-hmm.
They're saying most people call him a centrist. Describe him as sensitive to the needs of marginalized groups, advocates for social justice. However, he also opposes ordaining women as deacons, which is seen as a more traditional view. He's viewed as a potential compromise candidate, appealing to those who want to maintain some traditional order within the church.
Real quick, Bruce, could you sit like you're talking with Jason and move the mic when it's supposed to go?
I think it makes me watch. Listen to your point. What I think people are waiting
Was that Leo the 14th?
You might want to move it down a little bit and point it up a little, just so it doesn't block your face. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Well, you were robbed again. They gave it to a different Chicago Catholic.
Yeah.
That makes me sad. You were right there in front of them, and they went with a math major instead. 69 years old, so he could serve for a while.
Is this?
Seriously.
Yeah.
It's like they were looking for you and settled for Prevost. Oh, he's stepping out. Sorry. Can we take a minute to watch him step out? Step out. Yes.
Chosen the name Leo the 14th.
It's funny.
That is pretty wild that it's just like immediately
You're
there's
elevated.
this. You're elevated.
And you're accepted. You're
you're loved.
You're loved.
Yeah.
It's interesting how you love The Office. You love the guy, but you love The Office.
Yeah.
And the guy he fits. That's amazing. To be in that place, that square is impressive.
Yeah.
I was there when it was packed. It was Pope Benedict.
Girls are crying. There's a little girl crying her eyes out.
And he came out to address everybody. I mean, there had to have been, I don't know, 100,000, 150,000 people.
Is he crying? He looks like he's crying.
The Pope?
Yeah. Sorry, I'll
Chicago
stop it.
don't cry.
I'll stop it. That's right. What's the matter, you?
What are you, stupid? You talking to me?
That'd be his first
What
words.
kind of idiot are you?
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
talking
What
to
are
me?
you people, stupid? Sit down and shut up and listen.
His Wikipedia article says Pope already.
Wow, that's fast. Someone's editing quickly.
That is fast. All right. It's the podcast.
Okay, so how many popes have I known? Pope John Paul's the first one I remember.
John Paul, who was the Polish Pope?
That's John Paul.
That was John Paul. He confronted.
Yeah.
I mean, that was an interesting Pope in the sense that talk about having an impact on actual current history and politics.
Yeah. Oh, he really
That
did.
was when Poland was pushing
Yeah.
back and the whole, what do they call it, was coming in.
Okay, so he came in 78, so that means there was one more before him that I was too young to pay attention to, but I remember Pope John Paul pretty well. Yeah, he was conservative but well loved, and yeah, seemed to have a big impact on.
Well, he really
Politics.
pushed back against the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
And stood in solidarity with the Poles who were
Yeah.
saying we're done with
Polish
communism. Polish people are hard-headed people, man. They're stubborn in a good and a bad way.
Yeah.
Because they've just suffered so much, and they're like, we ain't taking it no more.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. That famous line where somebody reminded Stalin that the Pope still had sway in one of their Eastern Bloc countries, and he kind of snorted to the Pope. How many divisions does he have?
Like military.
Military divisions.
Yeah.
Soft power and hard power.
Yeah.